was Kimberly Schlappman from Little Big Town,
Mm.
and she had told a story on the episode about after her first husband died and laying in his closet, and she's sobbing as she's telling us the story, and she says, "I've never told anybody any of this." And then when I'm done recording, I realized I never hit record on her microphone, and so we have none of it. And I'm like laying my hands on the machine. "Jesus, I need you to do a miracle. Jesus, I need you to find a recording I cannot find." And it showed up. I mean, it showed up for our producer, but I said to my manager that day, Kelly Haywood, I was like, "I'm never doing a show by myself ever again." Because I'd recorded it myself without an engineer. And I was like, "That's the last one. We never do it without an engineer because I can't think of everything. And I forget things like hitting the guest's microphone." So
So you did get it though. Jesus answered your
yes,
prayer.
the Lord, the Lord. I
So
am not kidding you, the Lord.
so we're
So
actually recording. We're recording right now. So
okay, great.
I think this podcast begins with you telling that story.
Oh,
Um,
bless Kimberly Schlappman's life.
I
She was
think
so good
that's
to me.
I think that's really good. Annie
Totally.
Downes, thank you so much for being here.
I'm
I
so glad to see you, Granger.
I'm good. It's glad to see you too, and I've learned so much from you. And I believe we've actually only seen each other once in person. Is that right? In Florida? Is that
Yeah, in
right?
Florida. Yeah, I think so.
It's interesting because in the music world, it's not too different. You see these artists,
Uh-huh.
and usually we would see each other at award shows, and
Yep.
every once in a while we would, wake up and we were in the same city, and we didn't even know it. And it's kind of similar in the Christian
That's
speaking
exactly what
space.
happened. Yeah, I got to the event and I was like, "Granger Smith is here? I gotta go find him." And I like beeline for you. So I was really grateful. I mean, the crew that had us, the Jaywalkers worship team. I mean, I just love what they're doing for the next generation. So anytime they call, it's a yes for me. But then when my friends are there, it's a double yes. So I was thrilled we were both getting to be there.
Well, I remember that event because I was pretty new to doing that speaking in that kind of space, and it was like there was a like a band and drums, and that they
Uh-huh.
were like raving out there, and I was
Yeah.
backstage, and I was like holding my iPad with this message, and I was like, oh, they're gonna hate me. Like I don't think I have anything of of benefit to say. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what I could possibly say after they have just gone through this rave. And then
They
I just
loved you.
I just had to learn that's just how it is.
That's just how it is. They go that hard and then they sit and listen.
Yeah.
And it is,
Yeah. That's
it's a real joy. You know, there are a lot of people like you and me in our job who don't get invited to speak into the lives of the next generation.
mm,
And for one reason or another, maybe they're unwilling or maybe that's not who they're pursuing right now or whatever. I am so thankful anytime someone says, "Come talk to teenagers or 20 somethings," because that's multiplication
mm.
of what God's doing on the planet. And I just think the next generation's got something special on them and I want to be around them as much as I can.
So true. It's heavy stuff. Getting invited
Yeah.
to that is heavy because you just go,
Yes.
"Oh, this matters." Not that
Yeah,
not
that's right.
all of them matter, but you think about the next generation and you think, well, probably a lot of them are not Christians.
Yeah.
They came here, they might think they are, or they got invited, or they're struggling because they grew up that way, but they're wrestling with, is this how I feel or is this how my parents feel?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you speak
Exactly.
to
I did
that.
the same thing when I was a sophomore in college. I mean, I
Same.
had a whole semester where I was like, "Why am I doing this?" Like no one
Same.
for some reason my freshman year, I towed the line. And then I got back for my sophomore year at University of Georgia and I was like, "Wait, I don't have to go to any of this.
Mm.
What am I doing?" And so I think everybody needs that. I think if you grew up in a Christian home, you need kind of a season that it's your choice and you make that choice.
Yeah.
It's also probably pretty scary for the parents and probably a little scary for me. Even at the time, I remember having some thoughts of like, "No, I have to go. I have to go to the campus ministry. I have to go to church." I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
"No, I'm 20. I don't have to do this." But I'm grateful for it. And now, when we're getting to be at things like that event we're at, I leave so inspired by them. I mean, I feel like I take way more than I give at those events because I'm so inspired by their faith and their consistency. That's what I wish I'd have been more true to in my 20s is consistency, and we see that in the people who are 20 now.
Do you think that is this generation is different than us? When you and I are about the same age. Do you
Yeah,
think it's
I'm
different?
44.
Yeah, I'm 45. You think it's different?
I I do. I think there is something in the generation behind us that they are native technology, right? So they've had it their whole lives.
Mm,
We're the last people who remember what it was like to not have technology, and but then to have to interact with it every day now.
mm,
So I think that is different. I think God's doing something different on earth. And I think part of that is because of the next generation. And in the next generation, you can see it when you follow Jenny Allen or Jonathan Pokluda and the revivals they're a part of at college campuses.
yeah,
Um, and so I do think there's something different about them. And I think the fact that the whole world has been in their hands
yeah.
for their whole lives, they have found the world less attractive than I do. And
Interesting.
I think the ones who know Jesus and have experienced Jesus, because they've always had the whole world right here, and they go, "Wait, this is so much better." Whereas I was like, "God, you're great. Here's my little life." And then I get handed the whole world on my phone, and I don't have good self-control, and
Right.
I don't have better boundaries. And I think they're doing it better than we are. More people in their 20s have flip phones than people in their 40s.
Mm, I think you're right. Yeah, I've seen that too. Well,
Yeah,
that's
so it's
I don't
interesting.
think I've thought about that perspective because I usually tell Amber, I sound like an old guy, look at Amber and I go, this generation, one day, this is going to be our government leadership, and we're going to live in, we're going to
Yeah.
live under these people. So I don't know.
It's
I
already a little true, right? Because our
yeah,
pastors are our age. How
yeah,
in the world is the
yeah.
church run by our peers? That's
Yeah.
crazy. And the
Head
government,
football coach, head
besides that,
NFL
yes.
coaches, government officials, they're our age.
Listen,
And
when
that
I see that I'm older than head football coaches, I'm like,
mm,
this is not a world I was prepared for. Aren't
yeah.
I the same age as the players?
Yeah, it used to be
Nope.
players, and then
Nope.
occasionally there's one like quarterback and one punter that's our age, and then now they're younger, and then now it's the
The
coaches are the
coaches.
same age as the head coaches. That's wild.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I remember one time at a conference there was a videographer and he was from Italy, and we were
Mhm.
just having small talk backstage, and he said, "What are you going to speak about?" And I told him briefly. I said, "Well, partly cultural Christianity. I usually hit on
Yeah.
that." And he was like, "What's that?" And I said, like what people think they're a Christian and they might have even acknowledged that they're a Christian or grew up that way, but they're not saved. And he was like, tell me more. I don't know this. I was like, wait, really?
Wow.
And I suddenly realized through this conversation that it's uniquely American
Yeah.
because he was like, you're telling me people will go to church on a Sunday morning just for social reasons? Like, yeah, we kind of feel convicted. We kind of feel guilty if we don't as Americans.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
was like, this is not happening in Italy.
Wow.
He's like, you
And,
either are
I live in Nashville, but I live part-time in New York, and that's true in New York too, Granger,
I
is when
bet.
you go to church, everybody is there on purpose.
Yeah.
No one's showing up because it advances their career
Yeah.
or advances their social standing, whereas in other I mean, I've only other lived in the South besides that, where that is true. I mean, we knew which politicians went to which church when I was growing up in my hometown. And it just isn't the truth anymore. It isn't the truth up here. It may still
Mm.
be the truth a little bit where you and I live, but I actually just had a conversation, with a pastor, for a podcast, and she said, "If your theology of suffering doesn't work for people in third world countries, it's not a good theology of suffering." Right?
Boom.
And so
That is
this
so
idea
good.
of like, if it isn't if I'm suffering, I'm not married yet. And so if I'm thinking that my deepest suffering is that I'm unmarried, but I have food and clothing and a home and friends and my faith, I'm not being
Mm.
persecuted. She's kind of like, it actually isn't a good theology of suffering. And I think the same is true here of like, if your faith, like you're saying, if your faith is not, if you're not getting up and going to church because you're propelled to church by your love of Jesus, or
Mm.
in your suffering, you are still finding solace in the church. Like you don't have to feel like you're the journal of the army every Sunday. But if you're just going because it's culturally what you think you're supposed to do, there's better for you. There's a better relationship that you don't have today that's available.
That's amazing. And so true. Suffering is a great revealer. Suffering
Oof.
is the great tester. It's the fire that when
Mhm.
heated, it reveals the strength of
Yeah.
the faith, like metal,
Yeah.
when it's heated by a
Yeah.
blacksmith.
Yeah,
That's
that's right. And if that suffering doesn't if my theology of suffering, if my like God should give me what I want, and the fact that he hasn't says something about God,
Mm.
if that's not true for children in the Middle East or for women in Afghanistan or for starving families in other countries and in America, then it's actually not a good theology, and that's not good theology.
Yeah,
So,
then it's American theology.
that's
It's
right, which is
uniquely
exactly what you're
Western.
talking about. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, you're exactly right.
Yeah, you said it. You kind of hinted at it earlier, the way you grew up in Georgia, and I felt that when you said it because I think about when I was in college, I thought, ugh, I got to get to church. Mama would want
Mhm.
me in church, you know, like
Yeah, yeah,
that's the reason. I need to.
yeah,
I stayed up late last night with my friends on a Saturday night, but I should get to church. Not because
yeah,
God wants me there, not because I'm being
yeah, that's
drawn there,
right.
but because Mama would probably be mad at me.
And it's a little tricky, right, Granger? Because we want people to go. Like, if you wanna go if you've got a reason to be in the room with the Holy Spirit, be in the room with the Holy Spirit. If you can
Absolutely.
be under good teaching and under good worship. And so I think at this in the same breath, I wanna say, I think you did right by yourself by going when you didn't wanna go. It's
Yes.
just this acknowledgement to everyone in the room, like, if you're not here because you've experienced what it's like to be loved by Jesus, then there is more for you. Like, there's just more for you, and I don't want you come in on Sundays because it advances any part of your life. I want you to come on Sundays because you're in community with other people and you recognize the value of gathering with them because y'all are also deeply loved by God.
Absolutely. I don't really, yeah. The reason you get there, it doesn't matter. God is drawing you for many different reasons. It could be the guilt
Yeah,
of
that's right.
mama. I had a friend who
Yeah.
his mother was saved and started going to church, and the dad, who was a drug addict, would follow her there to make because he thought she was
Wow.
seeing another man in the church. So he was hiding in the bathroom every
Oh,
Sunday,
wow.
and one day in the stall, he heard the gospel through
That's
the
right, he did.
doors and he was saved. So
Wow.
it doesn't matter how or why you get to
That's
church.
right. That's right.
That
That's
what we're
right. That's
saying,
so cool.
we're saying it's like we want to acknowledge a check engine light on your dashboard. If
That's
you're
exactly right.
thinking, if you're already here, I want you to think about the reason you're here. That's what we're
That's
saying.
exactly right. That's beautiful. That's great leadership. You're a great pastor, Granger. We
Oh
knew
no,
it.
I don't know. I don't know.
I do know it.
Um, I am fascinated by your book. Where
Oh,
did TJ go?
thanks.
Um, you sent me this, and you sent it to me and Amber as a friend. Like
Yeah.
and I say that because it's not like you said, I'm going to be on your podcast. So I'm going to send you this book
Right.
so you
No,
could
no, no.
read it. You genuinely sent this as a friend, and I think it's a beautiful book. It's illustrated beautifully. It's a children's book. It's easy to read, but what strikes me about this book is it is it's not universal for it can be universal for every kind of loss, but this is very specific loss, so much so that it even has the name on the title. Where did TJ go?
Yeah.
And this is not where did little brother go or where did
Yes.
grandpa go.
Yes.
You went in specific, and writing books similar to songwriting. Sometimes as a songwriter, we could get caught up and worried that, "Yeah, man, that's too specific because if I get too, I'm going to pigeonhole myself."
Mhm.
But there's another side of it that it's beautiful, that it's so authentic. And so sometimes songs blow up because they are very specific and beautiful. And it's the same
Yes.
with authoring a book. And I think,
Yeah.
I guess I should first ask, did you struggle with that thought? Like, should we make this more generic?
Yeah, so I'll give you a theology answer, and then I'll give you our family's answer.
Great.
The interesting thing since Where Did TJ Go has come out is multiple people have said, "Will you write Where Did Grandpa Go? Will you write Where Did My Mom Go? Will you
Okay.
write Where Did My Dog Go?" And they want it to be a series, but theologically, I can't make promises about where your family is
Hmm.
that aren't children, right? And
Yeah.
so that feels
Yeah.
unfair to write a book and make assumptions if I actually believe the gospel's true.
Hmm.
And so we stuck with Where Did TJ Go because I feel very good about talking about heaven in conjunction with the loss of children.
Yes.
And so it was really important to me. I mean, I'll tell you the truth, Granger. You and I recorded an episode of my podcast, That Sounds Fun, on the 1-year anniversary of the death of TJ. And I sobbed through our conversation.
Mm.
But when my nephew passed away, right when my sister was pregnant, we knew TJ was sick. He had a life-limiting diagnosis from about week 12.
Mm.
And so we had the whole pregnancy just about to grieve and hope that God would do something different. Well, about 2 weeks before TJ was born, my sister's counselor said, "You should find a book to read to Sam, my older nephew,
Yeah.
about the loss of his brother." And so she calls me as the author in the family and says, "What's the book? Like, what does everybody read to their families in the loss of a sibling?"
Mm.
And so I called counselors and pastors and some mom friends of mine who were parents that were grieving while they were raising grieving children, and nobody had a book. Nobody. There were a couple of suggestions that were adjacent, but none of them were like a gospel story. And a sentence that I write a couple times in the book is, "There is good news even in sad stories," which is the
Yeah.
gospel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and so what the reason it's so specific, Granger, is I didn't write it to publish it. I wrote it for Sam.
Mm.
I thought I was writing a story. I don't do casseroles, but I can tell stories. And so I thought I was just giving a story to my family. When I first wrote it, I wrote it into my phone. I was driving from Franklin, Tennessee to Nashville, so 25 minutes, just crying as I'm telling myself the story in my phone of what I want Sam to know about the loss of his brother. And so I wanted to talk about, here's what happened. Here's what heaven is like. And if you're still sad, that's okay.
Mm.
You can still be sad after you know what heaven's like. And I got home, I typed it up on my computer, I put it on 8.5 by 11. I stole clip art from the internet, and I went to the local print store, and I printed out 2 copies and spiral bound it, gave one to my sister and her husband and
Mm.
their family, and one to my parents. I thought that was the end of it. That's why it's so specific, Granger, is that's what
Mm.
I thought I was doing, is I thought I was serving my nephew Sam in the loss of his little brother. And so it never was gonna be generic because that wasn't why I wrote it or initially. As my sister, after TJ ended up living in the book, he does not go home from the hospital. He dies in the hospital. The diagnosis that TJ had, trisomy 18, the majority of children do not go home from the hospital. So writing that before TJ was born, that's what we assumed would happen. That's what we wanted to prepare Sam for. But through the kindness of God and medical intervention, TJ lived 56 days. So 3 weeks in ICU and 5 weeks on hospice care in my sister and brother-in-law's house. And so after he died, and a few months later when they started reading, "Where did TJ go?" to Sam, my sister would call me and be like, "Hey, the page about the zoo, there's too many words. Sam's bored. He is already bored. You got it." So that's why she's the co-author, is because she like fixed it
So
all the
you
time when she
edited
was
on the
reading
fly
it.
like that. Yeah.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And then I sent it to my agent and I said, "Hey, a few months ago when TJ died, we could not find the book we needed. Will you see if the publisher wants to meet this need for
Mm.
other families?" And they generously agreed to do a very, like you said, a very specific, a very niche book that somehow has already served thousands and thousands of families in the first month.
That explains it so well. Like, that explains
Yeah,
this
it was
the
for Sam.
it's like you said, in the music world, it would be like, you know, I wrote this song for my wife, for our wedding
Yeah,
day, for our first dance, you know? That's why
yeah,
it sounds specific, and that's
yeah,
exactly what you did.
yeah.
That's a
I just
beautiful
didn't know what
thing.
else to do. I mean, I have said repeatedly, I think I've said
Mm.
this to you, but I've said it behind your back for sure. Um, Parents who who are grieving, that are at the same time in charge of raising grieving children, are the
Yeah.
highest level of hero to me, because y'all have to. In my grief of TJ, because I don't have any of my own children, and he was my nephew, I was grieving alone. And in some ways, that's so much easier. I could stay in my bed if I wanted to stay in my bed. Y'all and my sister and brother in law, and so many of our friends listening, y'all had to wake up every day and feed people.
Mm.
I did not. And so what y'all do, and so my hope, what y'all do is just extraordinary, to do your own work on your own grief while raising children who you have to help them with their grief too. And so my hope has just been that Where Did TJ Go will be a resource for parents in the midst of their own grief to have something that helps them talk to their kids without just having to conjure up the conversation in your own, like, guts.
Well, I will say this. I'll say thank you for the acknowledgement and of strength, but I
Yes.
will push back on that though,
Okay.
because I have a brother, Tyler. He's my middle brother. He's
Yeah.
3 years younger than me. He's single and never been married. And when we lost Riv, Tyler was in a support role of me and Amber and our
Yeah.
kids as a good uncle and as a good brother-in-law and as a good brother. But he loved Riv, just like you love
Yeah.
TJ. And he
Yeah.
it was difficult because at the end of the day, after a few months or so, he's home alone in
Yeah.
his place, and he goes to bed, and he doesn't have sometimes when the kids run in and they're doing their thing, or there's a busyness, or there's something funny that they say, that it's a little bit of a relief. It
Oh,
breaks
sure.
through, and I'm assuming you didn't always have that, and Tyler didn't either.
Yeah.
So it doesn't
Yeah.
make your loss easier because you don't have to feed children. You see what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah. Fair.
thank you for
That's
that.
kind.
But
That's fair.
that is a pushback on that. So
Yeah.
you can't lessen your grief in that way and go,
Yeah.
yeah, hers, my sister's grief was tougher than mine.
Yeah.
Because you
I'm
love.
glad you brought up Tyler. I think it's really helpful for our friends listening to know one of the things David Thomas says, who's a family therapist, and he actually wrote a letter in the back of the book to help parents
Mm,
process. He says, children need one safe adult to process transition, loss, and grief. They
wow.
only need one safe adult. And so the gift of aunts and uncles, and the gift of
Mm,
unmarried friends, and the gift of married aunts and uncles, and the gift of grandparents is the children who are grieving have a rotating cast of safe adults. And so if they have their mom one day because dad needs a break,
mm,
and if they have Uncle Tyler one day because mom and dad are at counseling together, they have got one safe adult. And so that has meant a lot to me to think, okay, today, while I'm FaceTiming with Sammy and we're being silly and he brings up TJ, I get to be the one safe adult today that helps him translate
mm.
in this one conversation that helps him process some of his grief. And so I like reminding people, like, the parents have a really unique role, obviously, and so does every other adult that's willing to be that one safe adult in a conversation or in a day.
That's so good. And you say that, and
So
I think
helpful.
about my brothers. Not to minimize Parker, my youngest, but he is married and he has a baby. And
Yeah.
Tyler, it's just been a special relationship that he has had with my kids, all four of them,
Yeah.
and now with the three now, he has been that guy. He's been the guy that could take them and as a distraction or as something fun, or
Yeah.
allowing Amber and I to have a date night. You take Tyler out of this equation in our grief story, and it's much harder on us.
Yeah.
So not
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
has he helped us tremendously. It's a gift from the Lord, in the Lord's kindness. We've had
Yes.
Tyler in this, and your sister would say the same about you. And that's also separate from your own separate grieving of
Yeah.
these children.
Yeah. That's right.
And I love the book. I actually love. I made a strange argument of why it's very specific, and I actually love
I love it.
that it's so
Yeah, me too.
specific.
Thank you.
I was reading it, and you're kind of, it's so specific. You're kind of caught off guard, and yet there are families that go through this all the time, and
Yeah.
and you. I recognize that Amber and I. There are families, I should say it this way. There are families that are less able to have deep discussions with their kids,
Certainly.
and they need
Certainly.
something to initiate a conversation. And so
Yes.
you could say, "Let's read a book." I don't either. I don't want to talk about it, or I don't know how to talk about it. I'm grieving
Yes.
too, but yet I know that this needs to be acknowledged. And so you pull out this book, and it says, it goes. Here's what it says. But then something happens. Like, you literally turn the page after this exciting announcement of the pregnancy, but then something happens. The doctor takes pictures inside Sam's mommy's belly and can see that baby TJ is not growing like most babies grow. And then there's little pictures. And you could realize that there's a family somewhere that they go, this is us.
Yes.
And the next page, you know how your lungs could take a deep breath? Well, kids and grown-ups need strong lungs to breathe. Baby TJ's lungs are not growing stronger. And then it talks, the same about his heart. Something very specific, and I actually marked it here. When we lost Riv, we've got some counseling from the hospital staff on how to go home and tell our kids. This is something important. You need to know what to say. What do you tell your kids? And so they encouraged us not to say, he is sleeping, for a long time, or he's off in a better place. They wanted us to, before we said anything, they wanted us to say specifically, he died. He died.
Yes. Yes.
And you said that in your book. It says, TJ was very sick. He would not be coming home to live with Sam and Mommy and Daddy. After he was born, TJ's heart stopped beating and he died.
Yes. Yeah, I got the same counsel. David Thomas says, be factual and actual, because it actually helps children heal better. And so we really didn't want to put in the book, and TJ went to be with Jesus, though that is true.
It's true.
Or TJ left his earthly body. That is true.
That's true.
But the rest of the world is not going to tell Sam that his little brother TJ grew a pair of wings and flew to heaven.
Yeah.
The rest of the world's going to say, your brother died? And then he goes, my brother died?
Yeah.
And so we wanted the same thing. We wanted to be actual and factual with that part, because it also is a good reminder that TJ didn't disappear. TJ didn't disintegrate.
Yeah.
Riv didn't disappear. They are somewhere.
Yeah.
They exist somewhere else. And so we wanted to be very clear of while TJ is not here, he has died in his body. He is with Jesus somewhere. So we can hold both the joy and the suffering. We can hold the sadness and the joy. And so it mattered to me too, Granger, that we said the true thing. Kids know. I mean, they know when something's wrong. They know when everybody's upset. They know when something's sideways. And so as best we can, when we can tell them the truth, we tell them the truth.
As a reminder, you could always get a hold of me on cameo.com/GrangerSmith. It's a great way to get a video message from me from anywhere in the world to whoever you want to send it to. You go to cameo.com/GrangerSmith and you fill out the whatever you want me to say. Happy anniversary, happy birthday, maybe a word of encouragement to someone that needs to hear it, and that person may be you. And then I'll send you a video message. It's super easy, and it's a good gift. I've been doing this for many years now. It's a good gift to someone that is impossible to buy for. You don't know what to get them. Once again, go to cameo.com/GrangerSmith. I got to tell you all about this. Have you heard about Yee Fest? It's happening this year, May 9th and 10th in Georgetown, Texas at the Yee Farm. So you can come hang out with us, me, my brothers, my family, we'll all be there. We've got a truck show happening. We've got a mud bog competition, kind of like we did last year. But the new addition this year is a concert by me and my band and my old crew. This is not a tour. This is not me getting back into music. This is one time every year, we hope, to do a concert for my friends and family, especially Maverick, who's never seen me play live before. So come out, have a meal with me and my family. On Friday night, I'm going to give a little devotional from the Bible, maybe play an acoustic song or two. This is really a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And if you want to find out more, go to yee.com. It's a great thing to acknowledge what they already know.
Yes.
That something is really wrong with this world. We weren't created for death. That's why death is so confusing, and it's so disturbing when we see it.
Right.
We were not created for this. It is a disruption of God's good creation as a result of sin. There is death, and we will all die unless the Lord comes back. We will all die. And so kids are so smart. They know these things. And like you said, they're going to have the discussion with other kids, whether you tell them or not. So we must lead with actual factual. I love that. I think that's such a great point.
It's so helpful. It's so helpful. I just don't, I remember learning things on the playground I wish I didn't learn on the playground. So, as another safe adult in my nephew's life, and now in all these kids' lives who and families who read this book, if I can keep them from learning on the playground
Yeah,
that
yeah.
someone in their family died, then I wanna do that.
Well, the fascinating thing about you though is you have a background in teaching, elementary school.
Yeah,
So this goes deeper for you. Not only did you live it, but
yeah,
you saw it and taught it. And it
yes.
explains so much about your passion now for writing books like this.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it feels like one of those things where the Lord kinda was, like, rubbing his hands together and
Mm,
25 years ago when I was getting my teaching certificate
mm.
of, like, she thinks this is only for the classroom.
I know the
And it
feeling.
and had that been my whole life,
Yeah.
had I been the woman who retired after 30 years of teaching elementary school, that still is a high calling. That just wasn't my calling. That's
Yeah.
a really high calling.
Yeah.
That just wasn't mine. And so I just love the kindness of God that, like, what I'd have told you at 20 is that I'm gonna teach school, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna have kids, I'm gonna live in my hometown forever. And God was like, I'll let her think that. That's okay to have dreams and to have hopes. But what he saw was such a totally different story that 25 years later, I have the training and the tools to write a book about my nephew who died in order to help other families. Now, I know you think like this too, Granger, but when people say, if my story just helps one person, I'm like, if this story was meant to help one person, we should have gotten coffee. I should have written a book. We
Yeah.
should have sat down and had coffee.
Yeah.
I hope it
Yeah.
helps one family, but that's not how seeds work. When
Yeah.
you plant a seed, you don't get a seed. When
Yeah.
you plant a seed, you get a tree with fruit for years. And so
It's true.
God planted a seed in me years ago about teaching school and leading children that he has grown a tree with multiple fruit. And TJ's life is a seed that was planted. And I'm not looking for a seed and fruit. I'm looking for a tree.
Mm,
I'm looking for this to matter to a lot of families and help a lot of people. And so I'm thankful for the training,
mm.
the way God saw my life before I saw my life. And it certainly doesn't mean I have everything that I want, but it is better than I could have dreamed, that was for sure.
Amen. I see Amber and I have constant discussions when we see someone come to Christ. And it's a direct result of some fruit of something that was connected to the crazy stuff that's happened in our family. I'll
Yes.
say, River got another one. And of course,
Hey, that's
I don't
it.
mean River got it, but the Lord through River's story, the Lord
Yes,
got another one through River,
that's right.
and that's the same thing with TJ. It's the same
Yeah,
thing.
thank you. Yeah, we get to I mean, it is the sweet part of a sour story, right?
Mm.
And sour is the lightest word for it, but I like the river got another one. I would like to start thinking TJ got another one. Anytime someone comes to faith because they feel healed by one of our stories. It is the it is the supernatural way that God works, is that we do
Mm.
not have to be living on earth today to be impacting people on earth today. And what a gift that God I mean, my sister says all the time, there are so many families who have lost children that will never see the impact their child's life made in other people's lives. And
Mm.
God's allowing your family and my family to see that impact. And I think I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, you're so right. We're not guaranteed to see the result of the seeds. We
That's
don't
right.
always get to see the harvest. And in
Yes.
fact, we won't see the majority of it, but anytime we do see any of it, it's just the kindness of the Lord.
So the
It's
kindness.
just
Yeah.
a little bit of a window into, see, this is what I'm doing. It's much greater than you could
Yeah.
ever imagine what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
incredible.
sure this happened with y'all too, but man, my view of what we're doing here and what's going on and what comes after this has so drastically changed in the death of TJ, where I'm like, "Oh, this is the short part. Wring my life out. Have what you want, Lord. Like, we gotta I don't wanna take a motorcycle to heaven. I wanna take a school bus, like,
Oh, it's good.
use my life up because this is the short part. Like, if we live in a planet where kids die, then this isn't a great place.
Yeah.
We need to prepare for the better spot. This is just the beginning. Like it has really changed my view of the temporary nature of earth, this earth that we know, and the excitement of heaven and the new earth.
Yeah, that's Paul's argument in Philippians 1. Christ will be honored in my
Right.
body, whether by life or by death. For to me to live is
Yeah,
Christ
that's
and to die
it.
is gain. Should I leave here? He's saying, should I leave? Oh, I got work to do. So I'm
Yeah.
torn between the two. He's wrestling with this. Like, I want to be with the
Yes.
Lord, but I have work to do because I want to take a school bus. That's the
Yes. I want
same
to take a school
argument.
bus. Yeah.
Cultivating a homesickness for heaven and
Yeah.
realizing that the Lord can use us as a vessel is something that could just set you free. It crushes the fear of man. It
Yeah.
crushes the reliance on this world. It elevates, magnifies Christ and loosens our own contentment in what we have right now. And
Yeah. That's
you
right.
have done that. You have
Oh,
been an inspiration
yeah.
to so many. I want to say something. I know that you're so intelligent and you're so well spoken and you're so zealous and passionate about the Lord. So we'll put all that aside. You know,
Okay.
how have you grown this platform? I know the Lord has done amazing things through you, but if you look at your
Yeah.
story, it doesn't make sense.
It does not make sense. It does not make sense. I'll tell you a thing I've prayed from the start is I don't want one more follower than my character can handle.
Mm.
And so there are times where you get more followers and there are times where you get less. And the times where I get less, I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on with my character, Lord? What are
Yeah.
you working with?
Yeah.
Um, I think you probably would say this is true in your life too, Granger. What comes to mind when you ask me that is the more honest I've gotten about my pain, the more people want to hear about your pain.
Mm.
And so for a long time, I wouldn't talk about being single because I didn't want it to be the center of my ministry or my job. But man, when you start saying Jesus is enough and I don't have everything I want and I'm mad about that some days and this is the life I would pick some days and the complication of not having everything you want, people want to hear that. They want to be closer to that story. And so I think that's been part of it. And I'll tell you, we live by 4 rules at our company: work hard, pray hard, rest hard, and play hard. And we
Okay.
do all of those. And so
Was
I
there
work
two play hards
really
in that?
hard.
Was there two?
Pray and
Okay.
play. Pray and play.
Okay, I got it. I
If
got it.
anyone would have 2 play hards though, you've come to the right place. You
Okay.
have come to the right place.
I got it.
Um, so I work really hard and my team works really hard, but we also believe that prayer changes things and
Mm.
prayer is our directive. And we've made 2 decisions in the last 2 weeks that do not make any sense, Granger. They do not make
Mm.
any sense. They do not make financial sense. They do not make influence sense, but we feel like we've heard God. And you go, okay, whatever route he's taken us on, we may be wrong, but I think we've heard God. And so we pray really
Mm.
hard. And then, I mean, I am committed to my team not working on the weekends. Absolutely committed to it. The last conversation we have Fridays at 1 o'clock is we all get on Slack and say, or we'll say it Friday morning sometimes, but it's, what do you need from anybody else to make sure you're not working this weekend? Are you waiting on anybody? If you're waiting on anybody, say it right now because I don't want
Wow.
anybody working over the weekend. And and that, there are times where someone says, "Hey, can I have Thursday afternoon off to be with my kids? It's going to be sunny. Saturday is going to be rainy. I'd rather be on my computer while my kids are watching a movie Saturday afternoon." That's totally fine. I'm not like a dictator about it. But we take resting hard really seriously. And so you won't catch us on the weekends. You won't catch me on social media very much on the weekends.
Mm.
You won't catch us working on the weekends. And a sentence we say a lot is, we're not a hospital. We don't have emergencies. We just don't have emergencies. So I don't need a problem solved at 10 p.m. by one of my team members. Now, if my website's broken, that's really annoying. And that gives me heart palpitations. It doesn't mean it's an emergency. It just means a website's broken. And by 9 a.m. tomorrow, they'll fix it because that's when they come to work.
Wow.
And so we try to live by that. We do well by that about 95% of the time.
Sure.
5% of the time we have to fix things off hours. But I think Sabbath and tithing are the tricks to success, because if you hand back to God what he's already given you, you're limitless in what you can accomplish. He can do more in 6 days than I could ever do in 7. And so I think all of that, that's a long answer. I think all of
Yeah.
that has contributed to the impact we get to have in people's lives. Working hard, resting hard, praying hard, playing hard, and being honest about parts of my life that are painful to
Mm.
the degree that it's healthy with the help of mentors and counselors and leadership in my life. Um, I think that helps us stay on track and create the things we get to create for people.
That I mean, yeah, you when you speak like that, that's what I'm saying. I asked the question, and then you speak like that, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, now I see. Now I see."
Yeah.
But
Well,
when you look at it on paper, there is, and this is nothing on school teachers, elementary school
sure.
teachers, but it just doesn't. You don't see someone like you coming out of Georgia, Marietta,
Yeah.
going to UGA and
Yeah.
your school teacher. You're on a certain path. That path usually
That's right.
doesn't break and turn into what you did.
That's right.
So- but
You're
it's
exactly right. I mean, my family will agree with you that we're like, what is she
what is
doing
going
with her life?
on?
I mean, for sure, for sure.
It's interesting you say you're tithing too, because you're I know you're not just talking about money. You're really talking about also your time. You're talking about your life.
Yeah.
I am giving back my life. I'm giving a
Yes.
certain amount of time back to you, Lord. I read
Yes.
that you did a sabbatical, and probably the one place in the world that would probably be last on my list if I was going to take a sabbatical. That would be New York City.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
more I've
Came
thought
up
about it,
here.
after I read that, I thought about it and I was like, okay, I'm starting to put together a good thesis on why I could actually have a sabbatical in New York. Tell me
Uh-huh.
why you picked it and then more importantly, what you did during the sabbatical.
Yeah. So I actually take a month off every year. I take a month off every summer.
Healthy. I like it.
And I give my team 2 weeks off every summer. And it does not count towards
Mm,
their sick days or towards their vacation days. I gift them 2 weeks in the summer and I take 4 weeks around their 2 weeks. Because I want them to rest hard.
mm.
And when they are working and I'm not, they're making me really long lists, and I don't like long lists. And so I'm like, just don't work. How about you don't work either? And so we all take summer time off. I'll tell you one of the reasons New York is a good fit for me for resting
Okay.
is if I go to the beach, I'm the loudest thing there. It is just, it's so
I get it.
serene. It's so quiet. When I go to New York, I disappear.
Mm,
I disappear into the hubbub and the noise and the movement. And there's just always stuff to do. I don't think Sabbath means laying around. I think Sabbath means worship, rest, and celebration.
mm,
And so if I'm taking a sabbatical for my month in the summer, I'm not staying in my bed for a month. I'm just doing things that bring life to me for a month and I'm not working. And so I'm not going to sit at my computer, but I'm going to go to the Met. I'm going to go to a museum. I'm not going to sit at my computer, but I am going to go on runs every day that I can run for I trained for a 5K, trained for a 5K. So that's my level of running, just to be
okay.
clear.
Okay.
But I can do my 2 miles of training, and then I can walk for another hour and nobody cares
Mm,
because I'm in my sabbatical weeks. And so it is anything life-giving for me, and that's cross stitching. That
mm.
is, I don't like cooking ever. And so it's not like I'm in the kitchen for hours. I just don't enjoy it, but I'm very good at combining. So I'll make a sandwich. I'm not like eating out
Right.
3 days a week
Right.
or 3 times a day, certainly not in New York. But I am doing things that are life-giving for me
Mm,
that fill me up so that when I am back to work in July and we do this year, if nothing changes, it looks like I'm going to have the last 2 weeks of June and the first 2 weeks of July. So when I go back the second half of July, I want to run, man. I want to be so
mm.
full of ideas and hope. The best sabbatical I've ever had 2 years ago on the last, this was 23, on the last Friday, I was laying at the pool reading a book and I sat up and I was like, I'm bored. I'm like, yes, I got bored.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
2 more
Good.
days
That's
and then I get to
great.
go back to work. That was the goal. The goal is always to get bored because my brain, it takes a long time for my brain to get bored. And so
Huh.
we
It's
found that if
great.
I did 1 week, I never stopped working mentally. Um, 2 weeks I started to, and then I was mostly sad. And so I save all my vacation days for summer. So I give everybody the 2 weeks and then I save my vacation days for the other 2 weeks.
Where are you going this year?
I may be in New York again. Our family. So here's a really cool thing. I'd be curious if this happened in y'all's family after River. There have been some really interesting gifts God has given our family in the loss of TJ. And one of them is we kind of realized my age of cousins, there's 6 of us. We kind of realized didn't like only seeing each other at Christmas. And so we've started doing a big family vacation together every summer, all 20 of
Mm,
us. And we've only done it since TJ died. And so we've done it. This is our third summer. And so that's July 4th week. And so I'll do that as part. So I'll probably be in New York part of it and then be with my family the week of July 4th. And then
Mm.
I'll probably be in Nashville and just do like lay by the pool in my condo complex for a couple of days. But what a gift to get to do vacation now with our whole family. It is so special.
It is so special. And that's another thing, back to the cultural Christianity thing in America. That's another thing Americans have really lost is in the rest of the world, really, they take holiday and it's a big
Yeah.
deal and the families come together
Yes.
and we just work and just fill up our
Yeah.
schedules. It's uniquely American once again. So I think it's a
Yes. I
beautiful
think
thing.
so.
And yeah, my family, we have really started to embrace that more and more, partly because of my sister-in-law, Amy, who comes from a family that was always together for everything. And she
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
into our family and she's like, hey, we need to start organizing some stuff.
Yeah.
Let's go to
Yeah.
Florida. Let's look at Airbnb and see what we
Yes.
could do to cram everybody together. And it's beautiful.
That's exactly what I did. I mean, we have 6 kids under 5. I mean, it is a mess of a
Mm,
time, but it
yeah.
is so fun. You know me, I'm like camp counselor from minute 1. My sisters and my cousins are all like making dinner and the husbands are cleaning up and I'm like setting up an obstacle course to
Mm,
make all the kids run through. I mean, I am a camp counselor. I'm an elementary school teacher all the time,
yeah.
so I just like it is not the most restful. We're not laying by the beach, but at some point the kids will be 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 and they're going to want to hang out with each other and they're not going to want me to play with them. And
Mm,
so this is the time when I get to be tired on big fam vacay. And that will not be true in a decade.
yeah. Amen. Yeah, they're going to be they're going to be busy with their own lives by then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
that's
going to want to
amazing.
hang out with each other and lay by the pool and
Yeah.
be cool and
Yeah.
not do an obstacle course that I set up in the living room.
That's true. Well, it's a wonderful place to be. It would be hard to have this conversation and not address the fact that you talk a lot about your singleness
Yeah.
and how you feel about that. And you've probably come a long way in your thinking and how you know, in your own time have really reconciled what that means. And I think it's probably
Yeah.
very helpful for a lot of people. I think that's why your podcast is wildly successful in a lot of ways because
Yeah.
people want to hear what you have to say because culture says this, and you say I'm listening to the Lord. How do you
Yeah.
unpack that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is remaining the person who is unabashedly wanting to get married, right? Like
Mm.
I don't pretend like, well, now that I'm 44 and single, I don't want this anymore.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, no, no, no. Do you know someone? Like I am like,
yeah.
I still hope this is the story I get to live at some point. I still hope I get married and have a partner and everything we're doing. And I just I look forward to that. I enjoy dating. I think it's fun. And so I am I think that is one of the keys that has surprised people. For every time I talk about it, I say, I'm not married yet, but I hope to be someday. And I got so much pushback at first, Granger, from other
Interesting.
Christian women who were like, how can you say yet? You can't be sure you're gonna get married. I was like, well, I'm also not 45 yet, but I hope to be.
Yeah,
Can't we
yeah,
put
yeah.
yet where we hope? I mean, if my life goes the way I think, I'm going to get to July and be 45.
Yeah.
And if my life goes the way I hope, I will get to be married at some point. And so I think that tension of not having what I want and publicly saying that has put me in a unique spot in a lot of people's lives. And also, I'm getting to live my life in front of people who think, from what they've said to me, who say things like, I don't know why Annie's not married, but if she's okay, maybe I can be okay too. Well, if
Mm,
she's having fun, maybe I can have fun. Well,
mm.
if she's still loves God, maybe I need to figure out why I'm so mad at God. And and if she cried about that, maybe it's okay that I cried about that.
Yeah.
And so I think there is I think discipleship is best done one-on-one in real life, but I think there's some internet discipleship that is possible just by watching people's lives. I get discipled by watching people's lives. I mean, you and I talked about this.
Mm,
Like, I feel discipled by you and Amber and how you deal with grief and loss of a child. And so, because I got to watch y'all do
mm.
that, go through that ahead of me. And so I think there are people who experience their own singleness through watching mine Now,
Mm.
I don't talk about when I'm dating someone, I don't put that on the internet because he didn't sign up for that,
Yeah.
and I don't talk about breakups right when they happen. I usually give it a little bit of time, and I'm not saying who I'm crushing on when I'm crushing on, like, and so there's a lot that stays really private, but the conversations about how do you maneuver being a Christian, unmarried in 2025 that wants to follow God but has desires that are not met, I'm living that in front of our friends.
Mm. So do you, I know you've thought about this, but if you did,
Uh-huh.
if the Lord wills and you meet somebody and you get engaged, you're going to let a lot of people down in a way, you know?
I know. Do you know we've had, like,
Wow.
business meetings about this, as you can imagine. We've had,
Wow.
like, what happens when this isn't Annie's story anymore? And I think about that too, is what happens when people so I'll back up and tell you a quick story from August of 24. I wrote a Advent series for my audience that kinda leaned on singleness. It was called Stay Tuned, an Advent for those who are already waiting.
Mm.
And so I worked on it, and I was just spitting vinegar mad that I was having to do it. August is so gross anyway, it's so hot,
Sure,
and you're just
sure.
like, you're not happy about anything. And I just kept saying, "Lord, why are you making me do this? Like, why am I the one who has to write an Advent for single people? Blah, blah, blah." I was
Yeah,
kinda just complaining to the Lord.
sure.
And the thing I felt the Lord say is, "This won't be your season forever." Now, 22-year-old Annie would say to Granger, "That means I'm getting married," and
Hmm.
that's not what it means. Here's what it means. It means I get married, it means I die, or it means Jesus comes back.
Amen.
And any of those 3 things happen, and I lose a percent of the influence I have right now. And when the Lord said that to me, I said, "Open up the gates. You put me in any conversation you wanna put me in. If you're telling me," he knows us so well, like, he knows the thing to say to me is like, this is once in a lifetime. Are you willing to give up a once in a lifetime impact?" And I was like, "No, go. Okay, put me in the conversations. I repent. I'm so sorry. Like, take this conversation wherever you want it to go. I will say whatever you want me to say." Now, the flip side of that, Granger, is the fear that I've heard in my guts that is not from me. It's not from the Lord. Is if you talk about being single too publicly, no one's ever going to marry you.
Mm,
You're going to stay single forever because now everybody's watching.
mm.
And so I hear that whispered in my head. And the thing I know about God is He told me He wanted to wring everything He could out of this season of my life because it will change someday.
Yeah.
And so whether that means I don't ever get married or not, I don't know. But if I can help people who are unmarried to feel seen and cared for, if I can help my married friends to have a peer who is unmarried that they go, "Oh, I wonder if Katie, who babysits for us, ever thinks like what Annie just said. I'll ask her when she comes on Friday." Or I wonder
Mm.
if Ben, my little brother Ben, that lives in a different city, I never talked to him about his singleness. I wonder if I should ask him if he wants me to set him up with Katie. I've just, like, if I can help married families, married couples have
Mm.
conversations about their theology of singleness and their thoughts about single people and help single people feel seen, some point, Granger, that will change. I will not have this influence like I do today. And so I want it to do as much as God would let it do while it's my season.
What a beautiful, healthy way to think through that.
Oh, thanks.
That's so wise of you. And
Thank you.
that's good advice to anyone at any time that this season will change. That's the
Will not
one thing
last
we know
forever.
about seasons. They won't
That's
last
right.
forever. They never do.
That's right. That's
Um,
right.
and so that's such a beautiful thought. And if you did get married, then it's a whole new group of people that would love
That's
you.
right.
And so say someone's 38 and they say, Amy's 38, and they would say, well,
Yeah.
Annie Downes, she got married at 46 or
That's
whatever,
right.
and
That's
so
right. What hope to
it's
people.
it's
Totally.
another vein of hope that you could have. And then you would
That's right.
talk through that, and that would be your new season that you're in,
That's
you
right.
know?
And I'll talk about how complicated it is to put together 2 grown-up lives
Yes.
and
Yes.
what it is like to have 2
Yeah.
full lives with friends and a career, and now we're putting them in one house.
Yeah.
I mean, that will be what happens is, wait, my nephew Sam FaceTimes me every morning. Is that gonna change? Like, I mean,
Mm,
this is, like,
mm,
there is complication to 2 40 somethings putting their lives together. And there's gifts, and people will hopefully get to watch all of that. And until that is my story or God does something different, they will watch me live an abundant life in the life he's given me. There's more than one path to abundant life. You can be single or married and have an abundant life. And there are problems I have now that I will not have when I'm married. And there are problems I'll have when I'm married that I do not have right now. Like, no one cares about my money, Granger. No one cares how I spend my time. I am like a free bird. And that will not be true when I'm sharing a house and a budget. And so I recognize there are gifts to this that will change. And I will process as much of that publicly as the Lord would have me do.
Amen. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus says,
Right.
I come that they may have life and have it abundantly.
That's right.
He doesn't
That's
say
right.
for this group of people or for this kind of
right.
people in this life phase or this only, if you're in this season. No, I came that they may have life and have it
Yes.
abundantly. That is a
Yes,
beautiful
that's
thing.
right.
You and I, through this book, Where Did TJ Go? We talk about heaven. There's such great hope in heaven. And amen to that. But we could also
to
have
that.
life abundantly today in the season we're
That's
in
right.
today. And you
That's
have,
exactly right.
yeah, you've gone, you embody that. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Right.
I admire that so much. And I also admire that you would take an hour out of your extremely busy day, that you only get one sabbatical per year, and you choose to give me an
Hey, I'm
hour.
not sabbatical and now. Listen, brother, I would not be talking to you if I was on my break.
I know.
It ends June. Don't you
But
worry.
I'm saying you have stacked up your work, and you're fruitfully busy. I don't really like the word
Yeah,
busy.
that's
I hate that word,
yeah.
but you are fruitfully busy, and you have given me an hour. So thank you so much, Annie. And
A pleasure.
yeah, I think you have so much wisdom that so many people could hear. So
Thank you.
I look
Thank
forward
you,
to
Fred.
seeing
I
you.
appreciate you letting me share about TJ to all your friends. It means a lot. Every time I get to talk, and every time we
Yeah.
get to talk about him, you remember he's real. And I remember TJ. And so I'm really thankful. And I remember River. We will remember him.
Amen.
Amen.
One day I will walk into a back of a church building and I'll see you and I'll go, oh, you're here.
That's exactly
You'll
right.
say,
It
"You're here."
happens sooner than we realize. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And
Yeah,
we'll see
thanks
you
for
down the
having
road.
me.
Thanks for joining me on the Granger Smith podcast. I appreciate all of you guys. You could help me out by rating this podcast on iTunes. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to this channel, hit that little like button and the notifications bell so that you never miss any time I upload a video. Yee yee.